as president, he was 100% in favor of the extension of slavery to the new territories as president.
He was in favor of extending slavery and of territorial expansion. For Jackson, even though the term manifest destiny is something that comes about or was coined in 1845, Jackson throughout his career is someone who is focused on the idea of manifest destiny. And for him, manifest destiny is not just territorial expansion, but it's also the expansion or the extension of slavery as part of that territorial expansion.
This is a what if, and I know what ifs are hard to answer sometimes, or maybe not even fair. Jackson, I think you had alluded to before, was against nullification, a strong proponent of the Union. What if Jackson had lived closer to the time of the Civil War, Union or Confederacy?
I've gotten that question a lot as well. Okay. It is such a tough question because you're dealing with what ifs. The Civil War occurs or starts 16 years after Jackson dies. So it's hard to say. I think you can look at it two ways. One, Jackson was a very strong supporter of the Union. And I think a lot of that comes from his participation in the U.S. Army. And it's interesting because that sense of nationalism that comes from his military experience in some ways works against his Southern perspective. So the nullification crisis was a crisis that was ostensibly about the tariff, but really was about a state's right to determine the constitutionality of federal laws. And you would think Jackson, who was someone who generally supported states' rights, you would think that he would be on the side of the nullifiers, but he's not. This sense of nationalism, this sense of unionism comes to the forefront during that crisis of 1832-33. So from one perspective, you can look at Jackson in the Civil War and think, well, he probably would have supported the Union. He was someone who had stood for the Union in 1832-33. He probably would have done the same thing in 1861. That seems fair to say. On the other hand, Jackson was also very firmly entrenched in slavery. And as the events leading up to the Civil War testified, slavery became the crux issue that Americans were focused on in the run-up to 1860-61. So would Jackson have been pulled in that direction because of his attachment to slavery and his dependence upon enslaved labor? It's hard to say. I could go both ways. I could definitely see him supporting the Union and going for keeping the United States together. But frankly, I could also see him going in the other direction. And particularly once Lincoln introduced military action in April of 1861, I could definitely see Jackson moving in the direction of secession.